This is a warning that the following podcast was recorded without the use of a professional microphone due to technical difficulties. This particular show will require regular toilet and coffee breaks due to the intensity of talking for a longer than normal Guest Talks podcast.
Welcome to Guest Talks with Tracy Arbon, bringing you special guest interviews from musictalks.xyz.
Hi everybody, it's Tracy here from Music Talks, and we have got our guest talks today. He's not just a gentleman, he's the captain. He is a captain of, I don't actually really know where to start, because this man, you cannot put this man in a box, obviously. He is not just an entertainer, he's got long legs, apparently, from what I understand. But welcome to Guest Talks, Captain of the Lost Waves.
Tracy, what a marvellous, marvellous introduction. And I'm sure, Tracy, there are some people who would like to put me in a box. But of course, those incredible long legs allow me to just sear away and slice through any tape that sears that box solid, including my mouth, which I've escaped from. But lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Now, the captain of, like, a vessel, like, I mean, I have so much to ask you about how this came about, but I guess for those who don't know, can I just actually mention, or just go over a review that I read recently? Okay, I'm going to read just a portion of a review that I read. There are so many reviews that I've seen. This one reads, "The captain was born to be an entertainer, perhaps even a prophet. Watching his show is a life-altering experience." That's from the Huffington Post. Now, that's pretty amazing. And you've got so many reviews, 5-star reviews. I wish I lived closer so I could come and just have a look at one of your shows. Could you explain just a little bit to the audience, to our fans, what exactly, I mean, we know you sing, we know you have a band, but, you know, it's not your typical band, is it? No. Can you explain to people exactly what it consists of? Because it is something I've never, ever experienced, and I've got to say, it is fantastic. I just was blown away when I was introduced to this.
Well, that's very kind of you. I feel like the lady who's just grabbed hold of the wedding bouquet from Tracy. What can I say? I often think that our greatest moments are when we get ourselves out of the way. And strangely for myself is that there's a high intuitive factor that goes on at a show of mine. So there's a lot of intuitive performance. If that means just vibing or jamming off an audience member. And if someone throws me a line, I remember coming up with a Scandinavian rap recently because someone decided they'd like a Scandinavian rap in the style of Emily Bronte, which is three paradoxical elements that shouldn't ever go together. And I honestly believe that art is that when you allow yourself to be that open to anything that comes in, you're tuned into something far greater than you. So I try not to quantify what I do intellectually, because if I did try to quantify it intellectually, I would probably lose the sense of what's about to happen. I try not gestate, or I try and only digest that which is a sense of the magical. And I believe that alchemy is all around us, but we've all got our own distinct blind spots. I think human beings are created that way, that we all tend to want convincing about things or want factual evidence or opinions. But once you go to another place, which is beyond the intellect can edit these things, which of course that's why we do it. It's like writing. If you write a book or start to write with a pen, you should never edit yourself whilst writing. You can edit at the end of it, but don't start editing, whether it's a spelling mistake or just let it run. And people often, they're not allowed to be in that place enough, I don't believe. And I believe it's not a sense of loneliness, it's a sense of being at one with one's own solitary sense to find out who you are, because we are unfigure-outable. We'll never find out who we are. That's why making prejudice or judgments about others is quite lax, really, because we don't really know who we are. So we choose to sort of say who we think others are. And I think, Tracy, I do a lot of solo work as well as working with fabulous accordion player in the band, and they learn to roll their eyes, because if there's a moment where something will take off and something new is started, no show's the same, but I think that's what keeps it fresh. And I think it was bringing all the things that I would like to do within the concept of a performance that I thought I love theatre, I love comedy, I love storytelling, I love acting, I love intuitive, creative practice. So being allowed to do all those things can be difficult, because we tend to put things, as you said originally at the start of the program, into boxes.
Yeah.
And therefore things into boxes. Is this a band? Is it this? Is it that? Is it? I call it new vaudevillian folk opera.
Yeah.
and of course, some people do have a prejudice against men in top hats. So, so unless they think it's some sort of pale imitation of The Greatest Showman, they're not willing to kind of give it the time. And I think we make lots of subconscious decisions about why we choose to listen to something or choose to engage with it. And I think this is just, I think in the best way I can summarize, after trying so hard there with a flurry of words, the best way I can describe it is it's my pure intuitive self, like that of a child state, and going with what chooses to grab me at any moment without being edited or being told what I should do or being told that, no, you can't do that with an audience. I decided to do it, and therefore it's very instinctive, it's very natural. And for all its success at one level, which is a smaller level, a bespoke level, it's as natural a thing as I can imagine doing. Maybe that's the best way I can put it.
Well, I don't know if you would agree with me on this, but I would have to say it's probably the purest form of creativity.
Oh well, yeah. Well, you've just mirrored it straight back, basically.
So, I think it's absolutely incredible. When I first read your bio and all the information about you, I felt kind of confused. I have to admit, I was.
Yeah,
but
no, that's good.
but but it really sparked my interest in the fact that I had to go over and find out more about who you were and what you've done, and look at your videos and oh my gosh, do you know what was really funny about it though? My 15-year-old came in and said, "What's this? This is sick." And it's great because I'll go back to what I was saying before. When I was actually reading your bio, there was a line in there, and it said that there's a diverse range of sounds that includes the bouzouki, the violin, the sitar, vibraphone, banjo, synths, kettle drums, choirs, and harmonium. And I've gone, and I just couldn't put it all together. So obviously I had to, jump over and my mind was blown. I was just thinking, this is genius level. This is absolutely genius level. I don't know if anybody's mentioned that before or not, or I'm not. I would love to know how you came about this whole idea, or was it just as go with the flow of how you are as a person? Are you an outgoing, very charming, with this amazing character? Are you like that all the time, or?
Well, there's a plethora of thoughts you've given there, which is it's fabulously well thought out, and I think exactly what you're saying, Tracy, is. There's a strong. It's like a corsair of emotional acolytes. It's like a real emotional. You've created an emotive state there, and the intellect is trying to understand how to put that all into a digestible fragment. I think for myself, it's interesting what you've asked me there, because I think the whole Captain journey is how could I describe it? Maybe a caricature or the deepest. I'm an introverted extrovert, possibly, because I look at life and all its idiosyncrasies, and since a young child was always aware of something else going on, either within me, without me. I would have always been pleased if I could have been the child at school who could have just accepted how the status quo was. It would have made for a much easier life growing up. But the actual strange dissonance of life is that our greatest success comes from our greatest failures. And often I have found through my own life that my greatest challenges, and whilst even being with a record label, I realized I was straitjacketed. And I thought that myself at the time, why is it not just enough for me just to get up, do my thing solo with a band, not say much, do the thing, let the music speak, which is enough in itself. There was always something else in me that wanted to express this. It's almost like a force which doesn't always feel like it's from me. And without kind of making that into some mystical, cryptic idea, I'm not trying to understand what that force is. It's always been there. It's like a deeper essence of something which wells up and then allows you to say, okay, I'd rather do everything the way I'd like to do it. I became really quite unwell about 10 years ago with glandular fever, and it was so bad that I did actually make the point that after coming away from the record business, if I got the chance to do anything again, what would I do? Would I completely envelop and be everything that I've always had to marginalize or be told that I couldn't do it because the label said it was too confusing? You've used the very same words, that you can't be seen as profound and eccentric, I was told. You can't play characters on stage. People will think you're insane. You can't touch on matters like this. That is far too honest. I was actually told these words. That's far too honest. That could leave the audience filtering out. And this is entertainment, they said. I said, but what is entertainment other than a form of escapism, but also authentic connection? And the paradox of what I do now is there's a profound connection with an audience through the fun we have, and the profound connection we have through the emotive states the audience will come along with me. I do think that now this whole sort of journey is my own innate truth. And whether people like that or don't like that, that's okay. But I'm giving the world my idea of, it doesn't have to be anything specific, or it's not prescribed. It's purely something that comes from a place, as I say, it's very much a childlike state. And when I was even asked by one marketing person, tell me your audience and stop messing around between young and old, and I said, I've had everyone at a show from 8 years old to 90 and all in between. And there can be radicalized ideas that people take away from my show. And when I think people use the words which are very, very flattering, like life-altering, I think what they mean by that is the messages I get from a lot of people with mental health problems are that they've connected to something. And it's that connection beyond whatever I'm throwing out there is some connection that connects us both. It's not that I own it. I'm merely a vessel for it. I'm transmitting that message, and somebody with mental health or otherwise may feel it, whether the song makes you feel happy or sad. I think that we are living in a very generic musical age where we are taught that there's some great music still being made, but it's very, very generic. The message is always generic. And you look back to the golden age of music, as I call it. It's almost like I see an evolution in consciousness. But actually, music was highly evolved in the 60s, the 70s, towards the 80s. It was being led by the artistic vision. Now it's being led by more of a strong corporate business model, and youngsters are being taught, they are being prescribed as how to make music and how to perform everything. I mean, people used to dance 20, 30 years ago. People don't dance anymore. Everything's choreo. It's an exercise in choreography. People can't just instinctively dance. So I think a lot of our instinctive, natural yearnings have been, deeply polarized. And when you look at the issues across our globe with the rise in depression and rise in all sorts of things, I think music is also a great barometer of that actually the music we listen to, it can take us deeply into our own catharsis and pain, and I think great music can do that, but there isn't a lot of light and shade anymore. There isn't a sense of euphoria through finding ourselves, and we become more extravagant versions of this, what I call this skinny self, and I think that's where issues are, I think, quite common for all of us, and I think particularly with artists, I see this across the artistic spectrum, that there is a deep confusion about what we're doing and why we're here. Not just you and me talking on the radio. I'm just talking about living.
General. I think we're all confused, actually. We've just had the election here, and I tell you what, we were all very confused.
You know, did you ever think of a time where snollygosters did not rule the airwaves? Snollygosters being dishonest, shrewd, or calculating politicians. We are run by kakistocracies, aren't we? Governments run by their worst citizens, but that's always been the case. It's people with a deep power, and I think it's a deeply narcissistic time we're living in. I think it's just seeing beyond that and seeing where. Sorry. No, I was just going to say it's quite interesting what you're saying, and over the last 6 months of me interviewing people, and the more music that always comes in my inbox every day, and I'm not saying I get bored with it, but I tell you what, when there's things like this that just go, wow, it's almost like you're this whole concept, this whole. I don't know what you call it. I don't know, and that's, I don't have a problem with. I don't know if you have a problem with that, but it's just it's almost like your music is something that people need to hear. When they hear it, they realise then what they've missed out on. Do you know? It's like. No.
Do you know what I mean?
Sorry.
It's like,
No, you're hitting the nail on the head, and I know to the listeners they might be thinking, oh, hang on, is this premeditated or no? This is purely instinctive. It's the first time we've spoken on air.
Yeah.
And
my mic.
Exactly.
My mic.
Yes, and exactly. Your mic stopped working, so we decided to go back old school analog. Yeah. It's not quite analog, but it's got a hint of analog across the airways. But exactly what you said there is a bit like.
You don't know what you've got until you've. What's that saying? You don't know what you've lost until you. You don't know what you've got until you've lost it. But this is almost the reverse of that. You know, you don't know what you've lost until you've heard it.
So you found it, yes, or you found it. Well, it's very articulate, Tracy. I actually think that when I've had audience members say similar things, has almost been a sense of my complete, and this isn't self-deprecation in a sense of, oh, let's all sound self-deprecating, but I take this from a place of complete humility in that we're all a work in progress, and no matter how far I go musically or anything, there's always something to learn. And I think that as we go on this journey of life, that maybe the second half particularly of life, I'm finding it's reaching younger people though, much earlier now, because I believe the second half of life is almost like a sacred dance, and that the first half you can enjoy the materialism and the things that draw you in and the colours and bright lights of all the things life has to offer, but somehow these are all finite pleasures, and once you go beyond that, I think the music and the performance, everything I aim to try and do it's a nod to something far deeper within ourselves, which goes beyond music. But music might be the stepping stone. It's the language we can talk to each other with that doesn't need to be quantified. And I do believe, and I find this very interesting with young people, that so many young people who take to my music, you were saying there about your son, who came in, and I find that fascinating, that children that haven't been privy to something like I do, kids that are into the stylish commercial music or grime or whatever, and they might come across a track or two and suddenly really embrace it, and that constantly surprises me in a lovely way. But as a fan noted at one show where it was called Youth Anthems, where it was a mixture of families and elderly and kids, he said the kids, some of the words may have gone over their heads, but how they connected with the energy of the room and the performance. And I think the kids are getting something at a far deeper level. And I dare say some of the most elderly people who have actually embraced. I do have a fan that's 82. And it's a very similar energy that's going on. There's a complete naturalization, a complete oneness with something, which seems to, it's a bit like nostalgia in reverse, like you were saying. It's a bit like for a child. It's like we're going through all these things and all these ages and social media and meltdowns in lots of young people now, and trying to find that space, that nothingness within ourselves that makes a connection to go, oh, I've forgotten how to feel about this. And somebody's giving me the opportunity to say, it's okay.
I can actually be happy. It's like almost what, it's like when back in the day, you'd blast music and you'd feel it, and you'd go to live gigs and you could feel it. And now, wow, a lot of feeling is just taken out of all the mainstream. I mean, it's what's called mainstream, I suppose, but
yeah, I do think that the way that music's made now, there's a certain sound, and we would talk about analog versus digital, and it's not just an analog versus digital argument, which would be a weak argument fundamentally, because both processes can be brilliant in different ways to use. But you've got this idea of perfection now, and it's the imperfection of the human being that realizes that old records may have had an imperfection about them, where they were recorded, how they were recorded. There was no auto-tune. Now, every song we hear, primarily, is so perfect, it's not resonating for us, because every voice can be auto-tuned, every instrument auto-tuned. So we're hearing, and every essence of the sound of nature has a natural dissonance. When you put 18 voices together in a choir, why choral song, I think, is so beautiful is because you get overlaps, slight flat notes, slight sharp notes. Even if they're barely audible to the ear, you might think it's perfect, but what you're hearing is the human disposition to execute something, and it's not perfect. It may sound absolutely perfect to our ears, but what we're picking on is a subconscious imperfection. And what we get now is music is made in such a way that it is so perfect that we go, oh, that's good. And it's almost like it feels vacuous, doesn't it? It feels vacuous.
It's just terrible. It's funny because I have been teaching singing for like over 30 years, and I've always
wow.
Yeah, well, I actually have. I probably shouldn't say this, but I do. Sometimes offer advice to people if they ask for it.
Okay.
But no. But
what am I doing wrong, Tracy?
No. Actually, something else I want to actually talk about, which is this falsetto thing that you got going on between way down there and way up there is just amazing. But I was just going to say that there are the big mistake that a lot of singers seem to make when they go to record is they're listening to. Oh, that's right. I did a blog post. It was on Music Talks, and it was a long time ago. I did this probably a year ago now, and I actually said, it's really, really good to try, if you can afford to get a vocal producer or a vocal teacher in with your recording, and don't just rely on the engineer or just your overall producer or whatever it may be, because what's happening is they musically might want your vocals to sound perfect, but you might get the best take with all sorts of grunts and groans and breathing in it, and you will not get a performance if you go for perfection. So
no, absolutely, and I there's this idea now. Everything's become very uniformed and homogenous. We've forgotten because I always say great singers should make you feel something, and it doesn't. I'm not talking here about vocal range. I'm talking about whether it was Leonard Cohen, who the visceral bowels of the depth of his voice could be heard across a record, and you'd go. I mean, he got better as he got older. His voice was like, it was like the bowels of the earth. And it was like, you know the truth as it sounds. And it doesn't mean that it's the truth for everyone, but you can hear Leonard Cohen's truth. And that's the same thing that I go, speak from your own truth.
Yeah.
And those tones that will come through from so you're taking it from the bottom of your stomach, and as your diaphragm's lifting, exactly what you said. We have this idea of this, let's make it pretty. Okay, pretty, beautiful. Pretty's one aspect of the spectrum. Oh, you can't grunt. Oh, you can't growl. Or then we get these pseudo growls, which kind of go, yeah, that's just for effect.
Yeah.
When you hear someone do it, and that's the music, what moves me is that I go, I know it's real. I know he means it. And it may be nonsense to the rest of an audience, but if I know he means it, I'm hearing his truth. And that's all we can do, because truth is subject to everyone's experience. But that is so true. And talking about the whole thing of my own journey with the tremolo, it was my whole body is an instrument. So why am I restricted by the idea that, and it just came to me almost like, it was like a dream, but I had this sense of the Aboriginal people, funnily. I was like, yeah, imagine the Aborigines jamming with Kraftwerk on this song I called Transient, which I created. Like, I thought of this ceremony, and I thought of the stars and the sound the stars might make between each other. How would the stars sound to my small, narrow five senses? I have no concept really, but in terms of my human essence, what would I imagine the stars could sound like if they spoke to each other? And I went through growls and different things, and then this idea of an Aborigine pointing to the stars, or any tribal member, it was a very indigenous feeling I had, that I was trying to reach that star in my mind's eye. And then this eminence of sound came from the bottom of my stomach, this, and it was like, carry that note. And then I was thinking, when people have heard me do that, I'll say, oh, I've never heard that before. What was that? And people ask me, how were you taught that? Well, no, I wasn't taught it. It was a moment. You could call it a moment of serendipity or synchronicity, but we don't always have to be taught things. We do on other levels. I think we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, because what's happened is people want to be able to quantify, again, the intellect saying, quantify where you learnt that. I've no idea. I have absolutely. I don't claim to be the author of it. It came into me. I may be the author of it. I may not. But whatever it was allowing me to use the range of musical palettes that I think we have almost forgotten. I mean, it's amazing how many singers I hear these days that can sing relatively well, but I think of them as all the same. I go,
I know.
Oh, is that? Oh, no, that's, my son will, oh, is that so-and-so? No, that's, oh, isn't that? Oh, I thought that was...
Yeah. I call it faceless music, and I think this comes up in almost every interview I do, because I'm so bored with what's out there in mainstream music. But I really should be careful what I say. But then I say, hey, what the hell? It's my show.
Hell, actually, at the sense of any great revolutionary statement, there is deep love, and I always remain constantly present to kind of go, don't respond. Okay, or respond instead of reacting. But I do listen, and I go, I mean, the things I tend to listen to are usually either old school, classical, or ambient, because, again, great classical playing, I hear it a lot of the time. And despite the elitism that goes with lots of forms of music was a thing like everything else. It came from... It unified everyone, and it was a strong working class element for kids who had nothing as well. You take bands like the Beatles, and they were working class kids. I think what's happened, music, like sport, like everything else, it's become this corporate membership only club now, and things have been taught, prescribed. So I'm with you. I feel like I'm on not quite a one-man mission, but I've had to build this from the ground up without many people's help, because even the people that may have respected me musically they were as confused as you were, and they'd say, you can't do all these things. I said, well, I choose to do them all. Well, you'll confuse your audience. Well, I have an audience, and those people, I had to trust myself so deeply, because there was a time, Tracy, where I actually did think, maybe it's only me that really believes this. But again, the truth is the truth, and it may only be the truth for you. But I thought that I could have been, and I know this, and I will dare say this, that I could have been far more successful. Two of the labels that I was on in the past, if I just towed the line. But because I couldn't toe the line, I thought, you know what? I knew it was over for me when I thought I'd rather be in a covers band than be myself, but being asked to be someone other than what I am. So eventually I had to walk away from that deal, and I beat myself up for many a year. My self-talk was really rather punishing, because I thought, why didn't I just play along, do the thing? Because I couldn't bear the thought of it becoming successful, because I thought then it would be like an albatross around my neck. And I think if you feel like that before you've had any major success, and after all, what is success? And I think for me, child, I thought I'd rather leave the world with a smaller legacy, which is my own truth, than a bigger legacy, which has nothing to do with me. So, and that's also difficult, because we live in a society which is all about 15 million YouTube views, or people are validated by their amount of views. And that's also been something people have tried to tempt me into. You've got to get somebody bigger involved. And I do realize that doing this all on my own, then the help of people like World Star PR, who are great people, and Eileen and Jimmy, it's kind of taking that to a level of saying that is equally, it can be frustrating, because if you're not a name, a lot of the industry doesn't want to know about you. But then I do realize that I'm doing this so far outside of the industry, I'm almost back in. So it's, you kind of have to accept your own. I am non-conformist, and I think what you just said there about, you've got to be careful what you say. In some ways, I think it's always been respectful of people, but actually you're doing a great service, because actually by saying what you're feeling may wake up certain people to go, do you know what? This lady is so on it. This lady, and I'm seeing it with more younger people that are finding that they're going back, they're rediscovering older music to go, this is what they were talking about. This is what they were talking about.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, because I've had quite a few people that have said to me and sent me messages that didn't understand what, let's just say, indie music is. And I'll say, well, you know, it's independent. It just means, I said, it means basically what you're going to hear is real. and you know, they didn't quite understand, so they started to look at what, you know, we had going on the site and all this sort of thing. And anyway, this was quite a while ago, and now she only probably about a month ago got back in touch and said, do you know what, I have not now ever gone back to listen to commercial radio. And it was incredible. And you know, I think, gosh, if I can just get and get this out to, you know, one person, that's great. But I think that what's happening, I think there is a change happening. I really feel it. Just this week, some major things have happened for Music Talks, which I can't quite say just yet. But it is a really true indication that independent music is, you know, look, I mean, I think the classic example of independent music. When I say independent music, I mean, a lot of people get that confused with they think it's a style. It's you know, basically for anybody.
That's a good point. I'll come back to that. Yes,
it's quite funny.
Come back to that.
It's just basically, you know, having artists that aren't really signed to major companies or labels or anything, and giving them the freedom to do really what they like. We hope that, you know, even the smaller labels allow the artists to do that. But the funny thing is, the really funny thing is, I'll try not to name any major record companies here, but it's funny how some major record companies have now got their own indie labels, which is really quite bizarre. Really, I mean, go figure. Like, how does that work?
Do you know? You've just said, Tracy. I think we've met in a previous life. We must have done. There's a real kindred shared connection about what you're hinting at. There's a gentleman who plays a lot of my music on a Berlin radio station called Lord Litter, who was quite a seminal name on the Berlin scene for many years, and he was playing Hidden Gems Chapter 1 for the last 2 years.
Right.
And he has conversations with me occasionally, and he uses a beautiful observation that I must send you through about what he believes indie music is, because indie music was, again, and this is why I say trust your feelings rather than your thoughts, because my feelings always taught me that I was on this path that was always swimming upstream, and even in the so-called organic, more autonomous festivals, I was told it was all about the art, and I get there and I kind of go, it's not, is it? It's not. It's a ploy to tell people we believe indie music is this, and indie music generally has become, with no disrespect to anyone, some of these bands are great, but it's more of a, if you're the Kings of Leon or you're a 4-piece moody-looking guitar band, and that's great, but they've narrowed the whole indie music scene into looking a certain way and sounding a certain way. And I last year approached a few music fanzines. One gentleman was really quite candid with me on the phone and actually said to me, I'd love to publish what you do, but they don't want this. They really don't want this. They want a named indie band. Yours is too, it was almost maybe seen as I say, that eccentricity and humour. Not that everything I do is eccentric or humorous. It goes through a mixture of emotions, but anything that has a hint of humour, you just don't hear anymore. I think yesterday we used to hear a lot of humour and a lot of tongue-in-cheek and fabulous little cheeky songs. Cheeky songs are no more. Everything has become, it's almost like the police state of music, that everything now has become this, you are an indie band, therefore you'll sing songs like this. An indie, exactly. It's been taken. It's metamorphosized into
that's
an indie band.
It's funny though, because my 15-year-old is actually a big fan of Panic at the Disco.
Okay.
Now I don't know if you've heard Brendan Urie. His voice is quite amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, but he also has this. When I heard you, I also heard, I guess, and I don't know if you like this or not, but he's got a track called Bachelor. Oh, sorry, what's it called? Oh my God, Panic at the Disco. It was called Death of a Bachelor.
Okay.
And it's very musical.
Okay.
Very musical sounding. But then when you listen to this particular album, it's just fantastic, and the fans love it, and it's because it's different. And and I mean, he could be doing an operatic kind of thing in one, and they actually did a version of Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody.
Okay.
Queen, and they did it live, and it just was mind blowing. But then he's now come out with this duet with Taylor Swift.
Oh, right.
Now, I don't know why he did that, but to me, it's just I don't know if I should say this, and I guess. Okay. Give me the hate.
Say it. You can say it in the most polite, respectful way, can't you?
Just give me the hate mail. Start it now. But all I want to say is that I was disappointed on the production, and to me, it just sounded like everything else. And obviously, Brendan Urie fans. I don't know how Brendan Urie fans actually feel about it, but I know that my 15-year-old doesn't like it, which is really quite interesting.
Without sort of segueing or detracting too much, just making a quick observation on that. When we talk about truth, and when we talk about an artist following his own aspirational voice, whichever way that takes him, whether he's approved of or not, that's true art. You don't make art to be liked. You make it from the heart of where you come from. And if people happen to like it and they connect with something true in you, then that's what I feel is the epitome of great art. I almost see artists. Another artist I did admire many years ago was because I've often enjoyed poetry and beat poetry, and I look even at artists like Eminem, and I think of Eminem, and I remember the Marshall Mathers album, and I remember thinking about that record of how darkly disturbing it was, but felt like, right or wrong, it was full of misogyny, it was full of cursing, it was all those things. But I thought, this feels so much like, I may be wrong, but the observation is that this feels like this guy is venting his spleen, and he's truthful with it. He might be making miscalculated observations, he may not. None of us really know that, only Eminem knows that. But I almost feel, again, this was dark, it was dangerous, it was razor-toothed, it was all those things. And now I see that Eminem's duetting with Ed Sheeran, and it's almost like, it's almost like, take the antithesis of the commercial. And Eminem, again, crossed over not to jump into bed with the commercial labels. What he did served the market. He was huge at one point because he was saying things that many disenfranchised kids really connected with. And again, somebody asked me once about a love song, funnily, Tracy, and they said, what would you deem a love song? And I remember at the time saying there was more love in what Eminem was doing than most of the love songs that I heard, because they used the word love in a formulaic sense. It could be like me singing to you about chewing gum, love. Or let's just put the love word in. It'll sell millions on Mother's Day. Tell mum you love her. And it wasn't really meant, where at least with Eminem, and he could be cursing, but I felt the love in what he was doing, even if it was something to take him off the edge of the jetty, so to speak, and throw himself into unforgiving waters. But it was almost like when I'd seen this Eminem's duetting with Ed Sheeran, Snoop Dogg's duetting with Ollie Murs.
Yeah.
It's almost as if the establishment's gone, let's take any of the dangerous stuff and let's bring them on board. And I'm not sure what you've just made the point there about the Taylor Swift duet. Is it like the industry controls so much that I remember recently looking at something. I felt rather naive about this because it had been said, how much to break a new artist? How much money? And I thought, okay, naively, maybe 200,000, because in the age of the internet and whatever, big label, 200,000. No, 2 to 3 million.
Yeah.
And when these people when they control that aspect, I do somehow feel like some kind of musical Robin Hood, just doing my thing. It might be a lone voice sometimes, but it's sticking with it, because you know that if you're doing anything that's the antithesis of what the corporate message is, that they don't want to particularly maybe give you airtime on any kind of, globalized idea, because children are being indoctrinated. And again, I try not respond to this, but I get saddened by it, because I look around myself thinking, many children I see, like our generation, all the generations before them, we've been indoctrinated by these lies and this conditioning, which we spend the rest of our lives trying to unstitch. And when I see the youngsters and I kind of go, I try and just give them at least something to take away, or try and find another way that might just give you, because inevitably we all end up like car crashes, because inevitably what we take on, we end up sort of driving into a wall at high speed and then kind of going, what was all that about? And I think that's what saddens us all, that we see it, and there's not, all we can do is do what we do, because we don't have the power to change the corporation message, the media message. All we can do is do our own thing. And I, in the face of what people in the industry were telling me, had said, I'll go it alone then. I'll go it alone. Oh, well, you'll have money if you do it this way. I can't do it that way, so I'll go it alone. Oh, well, get used to selling, just a few copies of CDs, because that market's dead. That market's gone. Okay, but I'll carry on. And this has been really, really difficult. But I've done it as a mature artist, as well as coming back from those things where I thought, wow, and I put so much energy into my shows that I thought, I'd rather do it this way. And if I'm hitting a few thousand people on the level that they are feeling something life-altering from whatever I do, even if it's a moment, then it's been served well, rather than me being some inane, I don't know, another anodyne voice across the airways. And it's not that I need my story to be remembered. I think it's part of, again, something greater. I think we all inhabit these characters, and even the captain, as I am the captain. And what are the lost waves? I decided a long time ago. We are ruled in a society of iron fists. And I decided to say, you do not have to rule with an iron fist. In fact, we don't even have to rule, but just try and have some aspect of what are the lost waves. The lost waves were everything I felt that was beautiful and magical that we don't see anymore, that our nations don't see anymore. And if their attention span's gone, they don't get to hear it anymore. But I kind of went against the grain by being told that, oh, if you do a song longer than this, no one will listen. Well, do you know what? If I'm going to jump on board your vessel that's telling me that the world's lost its attention span anyway, then let's just throw the towel in now. And I thought, no, I'll go on my little foray, albeit it isn't backed by a label or an agent or management or people that understand it. But I always felt that some people thought it was quite radical at the time what I was doing. And I did get trolled by a few people. And I thought, but I didn't respond with any with any anger towards that. I was upset about people just finding you out, but I thought, you know what do they want? They want us to have our own little version of a world war. They accuse me. They talk about it. Right, fight back. No, what do I believe? I believe in responding from my own truth. So I'm not going to engage with your... That's not placing me higher than anything. I'm human like everyone else. It's like you naturally would feel a little hurt. But then it's almost like, you know what, I can't control others' behaviour, never mind my own, but just try my best. And that is a constant work in progress for any of us on this journey, because people may think it's been like a sea of ease for me by going, oh, you're confident, you're this, oh, Captain, you can do anything. These are lovely things, but you have to remember that we're only sold a scene to anyone. People don't see the other sides of what we have to do to get there. And by following your voice is often the hardest journey of all, because you really are saying, I know you won't help me unless I jump through these hoops for you. And if I don't jump through these hoops, I'm dropped. And I think the labels, with a lot of younger artists, of course, particularly that they bring on, are going to be forced through those hoops, unfortunately. And those artists will realise maybe in 10, 15 years, like all artists, that they get to the point of going, there aren't many happy forever stories in the music business. They all end up, you have your pleasure, then you fall off board, and then you kind of go, wow, if only I could have enjoyed that more. And this is the corporate thinking world that has taken all those things from us. And it's not just in music, it's in everything. But I mean, I must remind your audience that I'm full of fun as well as serious talk. And I think we've covered...
Oh, no.
Yes, maybe we should go into kamikaze clown behaviour now. But yes, sorry. I'm finding this intriguing, though, just speaking with you about these issues, Tracy.
Yeah, look, I can talk about these kind of things for quite a while as well. I've had a few long conversations, actually. But, you know, I'm quite an optimistic person, and I really do believe that I think that this whole scene, the independence, I really do think that I think this is where the big stuff's going to come from.
Right.
Just looking at just with what I see coming through my inbox, and mind you, I would say there's probably only a handful of artists in 12 months that I could probably say, wow, that's got that element of surprise that's not put in the box. I love stuff that's like total mashups and fusion and all sorts of things. You know, I want to be taken on a ride, you know. And like when I like I said, when I went on to and looked at one of your videos, I went, oh my, this is just brilliant.
Well, isn't I mean to me it's like, I know we've often used the metaphor of jumping on board and sailing a ship, but the human experience is like, there are so many fascinating people, colours, places, cultures. Why do we choose? I think it's a safety thing. I think the human being is this fundamental, one must require change to grow, but one fears change. So ultimately people sort of imprison themselves, because I see this on, I think it's a smorgasbord. Why can't we take, oh, that's a little bit jazz, isn't it? Well, what's wrong with that? Well, this is a folk club. Yeah. Well, what? Well, that's a little bit punk. Why can't we, we are all things. Why are we always told to be one thing? And I think that's the thing. And I think art truly is. True art is, wow, there's so much expression out there that will inspire one, but if you keep your blinkers on, you're only going to get one sound of one thing. And it's a fascinating thing, isn't it, really?
It is fascinating. In fact, when we were talking about this, I was thinking, it'd be interesting to get Dr. Phil in. I know you're kidding.
Getting Dr. Phil in. Well, yes. I mean, in some ways, I think the all sort of philosophy and the whole kind of sort of archetype of what I think a human being is, and then is expressed through their art, that should be part of it. And it is a deep psychology, and yet the love song's a beautiful thing, but the love song has become so generic now that I don't hear many songs now on mainstream radio that aren't about another, oh, she's left me, she's gone, and that's it. And okay, that's a universal message, but it can be done in lots of different interesting ways, and there aren't any, or there are very few, I should say, there are very few interesting ways you hear it done anymore. And some people have this idea that, well, everything's been said, we're only now repeating ourselves. Again, that's very pessimistic, and that's very rigid to have one form of thinking by saying, well, no, all music's been done now. It's all been done. We're only repeating ourselves because we've run out of ideas. And when people talk about a disdain for modern music, but then again, you see, because everything's run on a monetary system, and even the so-called free festivals, they want names to put bums on seats. I hate that term, but that's what it is. You see very few. I mean, the BBC do a lot of footage of Glastonbury in the UK,
right?
But it's always the big acts. It's always the main acts. It's not. You don't get some really, and I'm sure I played Glastonbury twice, but smaller stages. You don't see any of the really intriguing, off-the-wall stuff. It just doesn't make onto the BBC anymore. So if Springsteen's playing, or Kings of Leon, or Arcade Fire, or whoever, that's great, but you'll get 4 hours of it. You don't get 5 minutes of the Mad Professor, or whatever it might be. It's almost as if the whole thing's become this. It's a bit like the 9 to 5 working schedule that if you work in a bank, therefore will pay you, and it's very much that reflection. It may be on a much more subtle level, but it's a reflection of what we are selling the youth, that therefore the only people that are going to get our airtime are people that are big, people that are known. 16 million records sold. Have you ever noticed the way they do that? And I kind of joked at a recent Captain show in the last year, 3,500 records sold, 2,500 YouTube views on his new single. Because it's all about numbers. If you have the numbers and you are going to take, oh my God, this guy must be amazing. He's got 62 million views. Just because it's big doesn't mean it's great.
No.
And there are some things that are big, that are, you spoke about Queen earlier, one of my major influences, and what an amazing band, and amazing writers in that band. And Freddie was one of my massive sort of vocal influences in terms of just what he could do. And, some things as big as Queen or as big as the Beatles, there was a real essence of brilliance at the core of it. But there are many things now, you can spin many things, and there are some things that are validated by those views, but other things, it's almost, there's a funny little thing talking about independent musicians. There was a funny thing where a marketing man told me that I really should undertake getting lots of clicks on my YouTube videos. And I was very weary about this. I said, oh, how does that work? And he sent me a link, and I'm sure you must know this, Tracy, but lots of artists do not. Of course, it'll say, for $50, you can get an extra 10,000 views.
Don't do it.
For $100, for $100. And then there's a great one at the bottom, please make me famous. For an extra 30 million views, for £500, please make me famous. And this is the age of Instagram and social media, whereas the 50 million views is almost the same alignment as having, I've got so many likes, look how big I am. But we have no validity for great art. Great art should not be validated by massive numbers. But unfortunately, it's like a house of cards. You get the biggest acts. And I find it a little bit sad at a lot of festivals, that festivals either have no money, or the ones that have money still insist on a fairly formulaic lineup. It's the usual suspect. That can be every festival,
Yeah, and it's like TV shows as well. It's always the same artists. It's always the same on, and it's like, I'm so bored with this. It's no wonder, TV programs just aren't surviving anymore, and everybody's wanting to watch Netflix.
Absolutely.
So it's.
Do you think, Tracy, on that point, and I will say something, maybe your audience members will pick up on this. I was having a conversation with a young person only yesterday, and he was saying to me, what is it in terms of, why can't you, does career mean to career off path? I said, yes, it does. So why are we told we can only do one thing? And I thought it was quite intriguing, the conversation. I said, well, to only be allowed to do bits of things. I remember one agent in the past who said to me, you can't have a bit of this. You can have all of it or nothing. That's why if you look at all the major artists, they've either become huge, they've blown up, and then they are on everything. They are on everything. It doesn't matter whether it's the Olympics opening ceremony. Oh, who's it going to be? Oh, it's him. Or oh, it's her. Whoever.
Yeah.
You can't have a bit of it. It's almost like that very... is it capitalism overblown? I don't know. Is it the singular idea of, capitalism might be able to work in a more sensible climate, but the capitalism we have is so bloated and so beyond that it's this singular idea. It's like the lottery winners. 95% of people say, I'd rather the lottery was split and they do 10 draws. Oh, no, we'd rather, one man wins 76 million pounds. Now, I think on that level, people are looking at it going, so even if I've done this and had this and got this, I've got a little bit of a following here, you're still nowhere near as big as this man, this band, this woman. Therefore, she will be doing the show. Therefore, you will not be on the bill. And I find that quite intriguing that young people are asking me this. And they ask me questions about, why aren't your tracks on commercial radio? And we have some intriguing conversations about how the music business works. And it's this idea that maybe we do live in this kind of hierarchy of, we have kings or queens or princesses, even those things which are innocent and beautiful. You look at the Disney films you grew up with, but every girl wants to be a princess. And it's this idea that something will be unstitched eventually. And you go, so what happens to all the women, all the little girls who don't become princesses and don't have the fairy tale weddings? They feel undervalued or unacknowledged or much sort of misaligned. And it's like this idea that we still prey up. We don't kind of feed. I think we use a lot of rhetoric and we use a lot of terms in our language by telling everyone how special they are. But actually people, I think, fundamentally don't feel special at all, even for being ultimately, I'm ordinary. And you know what I'm good at? I'm good at joinery. This is another conversation I had where a gentleman asked me to sign his album. And I said, what are you good at? He said, nothing. I said, I don't believe you. What do you do? What do you do? What are you passionate about? I'm quite good with joinery. I said, well, you just use your hands differently to me. And he looked at me as if, oh, I said, it's only because joinery isn't glamorous. If joinery was the X factor and you would create, a beautiful little sort of wooden structure, then maybe people would go, wow, oh my goodness, wow, but I think people just have a distinct lack of value because we live in this so-called glamorous society about only those things that are glamorous, only the princess, only the Katy Perrys or the Taylor Swifts, whatever, they become the real princess. I'm not really a princess, am I? Not really. And I think this idea of comparison, and it's all about numbers and also, volume.
Yeah, I think a lot of that also is perception as well. And with a lot of the young people, they don't quite understand, what really goes on in the music industry, and the fact that music and major labels are very well connected with those major big TV stations. So, oops, did I say that? Probably, yeah. So, you and me are going to be blacklisted off all sorts of... but I'm used to that. I don't mind. We've got to speak, haven't we? Yeah, speak from your heart. Yeah, but you know what? Look, I've got nothing to lose, honestly, and I'm not naming anybody, but I mean that's the way it goes, and it's just a lot of the young kids, they don't know that. They don't know. A lot of people don't know what goes on behind the X Factor, the Voice, all these things, and that person shouldn't have gone through this round because we need this person in there because they're going to be signed. They don't know that goes on.
Do you know that I did a crowdfunding exercise because I got to a point where a certain ITV show in Britain was emailing me quite a bit, and they'd asked me to come on their show. And then the final message I received was, oh, we're not too far away. We could come to your house and we could allay any concerns you have because we think it could be very good for you. You could be very successful on it. So I decided to say, okay, I haven't answered any of your mails previously, but let me just give you my concerns, and then if you're in agreement, then let's have a conversation. And one was, I choose the song of my making. I arrive on stage and I'm not told or prescribed what to say as the captain. 3, I sign no pre-contractual obligation. 4, if you agree with all the above, then let's start a conversation. And there was no reply. And there it was. It was almost as if they will chase you, whether it's a novelty factor or whether they think you can do well. They will chase you, hunt you down. And there was an aspect of me thinking, could I utilize this to use it for my own? I could go in there and just sort of, I don't know, do something anarchic. It wouldn't be a program I would ever really go on. But I thought, could I utilize this for my own leverage of getting just utilizing my voice to say something? No, it will be prescribed as to how I will do it. So I carried on. I did the crowdfunding. I said crowdfunding or one of these TV talent shows. And why it's become that? It's almost like famine or feast. You can either be starving or why do you go on one of these shows? And yeah, it's so true. And the things that I've been told by other people that have been on such shows are, whatever you do, please don't go on it because of what happened to certain individual cases I've heard. So it's yes, like you say, a lot of kids don't understand that scenario, you know.
Yeah. Look, I was just going to. We still haven't actually let our audience know that you are like they said, you know, a ringmaster or like a master of ceremonies. You're a real performer. You always have this hat on. What's okay?
What's underneath my hat?
Yeah, what's underneath the hat?
Just my head, I'm afraid. It's a bit like those old quotes where people used to say, what do men with beards have to hide? And it was usually just their chin, wasn't it? And now beards are they're a very fashionable asset now, aren't they, beards? Everyone's a hipster. Yeah. Everyone uses beard oil. You know, everyone has beard oil now as well. You know, people that look like lumberjacks from a distance have the most beautiful hands, don't they? Do you remember the days when lumberjacks had hard, gritty... These were men. These were real men. They would have sweat in their beard. Now you go near most men with beards and you go, he smells amazing. So they've probably never done a physical day's work in their life, but they look astounding. You know, some of these beards, I mean, I have the same thing. I often yearn to just... I once judged a beard festival. You realise this, Tracy. I judged a beard festival and I put my hand through so many men's beards.
Oh
it was
my God.
It was like stroking goldfish. But yeah, it was lovely. I'm no beard expert, but are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, I heard a pinging. I thought it was some kind of beard police that came on. That came online to tell me. So okay, the top hat. The captain goes into battle in the best way. In my top hat, and it's kind of bringing together a form of music hall, folk opera, new vaudeville, progressive, world, whatever takes me, and we go on a journey together. So I dress for the performance. That is I don't really do uniforms, but it's the nearest I get to a uniform. I think the uniforms are only a form of introduction to what we're alluding to. And as I say, not many men wear top hats these days. Maybe outside of the Greatest Showman, who he's the hugest top hat figure on the planet. The only others you might have to go back in history, like Captain Beefheart and Victorian gentlemen. And I do see I've been adopted by many of the steampunk community because they see the music as...
it's funny, I was just about to say also earlier that I can see this steampunk resemblance through it as well.
Yes, well, I without describing any essence, as I say, I don't describe myself particularly because I think steampunk is it shouldn't be a genre. It's only about imagination. It can be as wide and as varied as anyone's imagination. So there was a term once said to me that there is no such thing as steampunk music, only music that steampunks like. So it can be anything that's imaginative or takes someone on a journey. So, and a lot of the steampunk community tend to like to dress up. You know, they like to make an effort, shall we say. And it's one of the few shows where I'm playing a steampunk show where I feel underdressed. Every other aspect of when I play, if I'm playing at an acoustic club, I'm playing a raw little acoustic club, then everyone, generally in the audience, is looking at me going, goodness me, he's well dressed. But when I'm playing in a steampunk show, I'm usually underdressed because some of the outfits are, like giant diving bells and people dressed as octopi, all sorts of weird, wild, wonderful outfits. But it's always the women, I dare say, that look these old Victorian Edwardian dresses, which are quite astounding, probably as uncomfortable as anything you could ever imagine being in, but absolutely astounding works of art. But it's most people on that scene tend to be very sort of thoughtful, had a lot of kindness from a lot of people in that scene, and they are thoughtful, quite shy people that I would imagine were the kind of introverted thinkers at school who probably tended to get bullied as well, because I think a lot of the steampunk tends to sort of thrive on politeness and etiquette and allowing everyone to be as they are, which is part of the beautiful thing about it. I'm not saying that happens in all aspects of steampunk, because like all things, as something gets bigger, other problems occur, unfortunately. But a large heart of it, I would say a strong 95% of the scene that I've witnessed is full of real sort of free thinkers, which is great.
It's kind of similar also, there's the geeky musician era,
That's right, absolutely. The kind of bedsit, geeky. I remember bands like Clem Snide that I used to love, that classic kind of geeky musician who'd stand there on the classic indie American film, the classic American soundtrack. There is a lot about that. I think some people who saw me in the steampunk scene, I think because a lot of steampunks tend to be more of a shy nature, probably thought of me as some kind of weird singing matador coming out into the audience and standing on tables. It probably wasn't easy for some of them initially. And the word often used with my shows is, at first I was terrified. I was highly confused. Why were you walking towards me? Why did you sit on my lap? And then 3 songs in, I was laughing along. And then I was really getting into it, because it's the idea of, if you don't want to sing along, the last thing I would ever do is kind of sort of impose myself or tell you must. I think that's the problem. We've all been told what to do. Audience, clap your hands. You don't have to clap. You can sit there looking at the floor. It's all right. And you don't have to revel in this. It can be the most glum evening of your life, or it can be the happiest. And I'm not going to tell you how to be. I think you've had enough of that. I think we've all had enough of being told how we should be. It's like going to a party with your party face, and when you enter the toilet and you decide that you can just let go of that fake smile, it's wonderful. And that sense of silence when you're in a cubicle on your own, you go, I'm washing your hands.
I thought you were going to say something else then.
Yeah. Well, of course, I mean, if it was a toilet in France, of course, I would be on the B-day. If, of course, it was... If it was applicable, not of course going for a number 1, but of course washing one's hands, feeling the gentle cascading flow of water, feeling soap like you've never felt it, and thinking, I just want to stay in here a while, because as soon as that sense of that chasm of silence and that beautiful ambience of feeling enveloped by the soap is gone, you are back into the midst of the fake smile. And I think that's the problem with parties. I'd like to see party invitations saying, come to our party. It might be okay. It doesn't have to be great. You might have a great time. You might be the guy who sits in the corner hoping it's all finished by 10 o'clock. But that's okay. I think it's when we're forced to do this kind of, hey, it's this enforced Jalila. It's absolutely amazing. My God, what a party. I don't know what accent that, but I've tried to incite a sense of excitedness through my nervous, visceral tract. I don't know.
So, okay, when you perform, though, there's, you said you go out and perform solo, but you also take at times, I've seen in your videos you've got a few musicians surrounding you. Yes. So how often do you perform live, on your own, and how often, where do you take the musicians in what?
Okay, right, that is all dependent, because as I call it, being a fiercely independent artist, it all comes down to budget.
Right.
So budget will allow me. We did the album launch 4 weeks ago. 150 people in a small chapel, which was beautiful. It was an incredible atmosphere. So there's myself and Muswell the Mute, who joins me on the accordion. Astonishing. I call him the master of accordion alchemy. He's a beautiful player. So myself and Muswell will do that. And then solo shows will be often. I mean, sometimes we work with a drummer. Sometimes we work with a mandolin player. If the gig... This is the issue that, as I say, that where the money's gone out of the market, if you're a smaller independent name, if a festival was to try and book the band and let's say to travel south of London, let's say the coast, Hastings, where a festival asked me, it would be £1,000 for 5 of us, which still isn't a lot of money. It's £200 each.
Yeah.
But they can't afford that. So they'll go solo. Could you do it for $350? And because a lot of my shows can work so well solo, and it's actually, I dare say, a forte of mine, and that the solo thing can be one thing where people can really enjoy the solo work. I tend to digress even more on a solo show because there's no one to answer to. So, but then the band can, and getting the band together where I work like this weekend, working both shows with Muswell, because the budget's allowed. There's a good audience there's a good crowd, and there's a good amount of tickets sold. It just depends on what the budget is. Unfortunately, there are too many small festivals that just don't have budgets, and sometimes I try and meet them halfway by saying, okay, well, let's try and do this, because I think that's the thing. This might sound truly altruistic, and someone might go rubbish. But I actually was having the conversation, I think possibly with Eileen and Jimmy at World Star, talking about, I have no inclination or no desire for me to be big or massive. It's not in my DNA to say, oh, I really want to be on the front of a magazine. If that happens on its own merits, that's wonderful. I think more what I want from this is that those people that have been allowed to share in it and have really loved it and really became fanatical followers is because of how the music has either touched them or the performance has touched them. And I know that might sound very, oh, come on, that sounds like it could sound a little bit cliche to listeners who are going, come on, you may want, maybe on my own journey. It is interesting because I think I started that with the beginning of the conversation, that how can it's an ultimate paradox that everything I do is character driven, but it's fundamentally visible. It's this connection with an audience on such a level that if they take ownership of this and they love it for what it is and they follow me, then it is kind of serving them. And as I say, without that sounding twee or cliched, it's me serving more people than myself. That it would be lovely. I don't deny that. And I said that once at a show, it's really confused the audience, because as the audience started clapping furiously and cheering and whistling, I've never been able to whistle. I can only do that sort of. I'm not a good whistler. I'm not a powerful masculine whistler. I used to admire people. Oh, can you wolf whistle?
I can.
Please do. Please do.
Wait, okay.
Right now. Oh, you see, that's so powerful. And growing up, I had this thing for men who could put those 2 fingers in their mouth, and if they usually had an Irish brogue, it impressed me even more, because it'd be like, hey, what's going on? And then they'd do the sound that you just made, and it's so fabulous. And I go, oh, it was that Celtic, Irish, mystical, and it was a man who was built like a powerhouse. And I go, he has control of the universe by the way he whistles. And then when he's not whistling, he has a romantic, beautiful Irish lilt. I'll be seeing you later. And it was just so effortless.
You should see my dog. My dog now thinks that I'm going to give her something.
You have a dog.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's the thing. Animals. Me and what sort of dog is it?
Oh, look, this is my beautiful Lily. She's with me every single place I go. She is with me even every interview, you name it. And
Lily.
she's a mixture of a boxer cross Rottie, but she's
Oh,
not.
fun.
Yeah, she's just look. She's actually been in the wars lately. It's really quite funny.
Oh.
She's just about to go and have a major operation. So,
Oh, is she?
She's 7 years old. She snapped her crucial ligament jumping up on a rock. So, yeah.
Oh dear. Cruciate ligaments, I know are bad. I know they're very bad in the sporting world, and it can be a long. Oh, Lily, in dog language.
Do you know? I will play this back to her because I've got my headphones on.
Of course, Lily. My biggest sacrifice I make for living life on the road and traveling is not having a dog, because I grew up with dogs, and I love nothing more than to be surrounded by lots of furry things. And I don't mean the sort of things you'd buy in a store. I mean things that are living and breathing and pant close up.
That actually move, yeah. That aren't wind up.
I love it. And I have this conversation all the time. If I got the dog, where could I leave him or her if I can't take him to the venue? Festivals don't allow me to take a dog. Oh, I wonder if I could keep him in the motorhome. Oh, that would be unfair.
What if it was part of your show?
Well, that's the only other thing I thought about. That's the only other way you could make it happen, is that a dog becomes a part of the show. I'd have to train him or her. That's a good idea. That was the only idea. Some time ago, I'd seen some lady with a dog on stage going, because of course, unless it's a guide dog, most dogs you can't get in anyway. But yes, maybe a dog is the part of the show and would sit in the audience and then...
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's the only way. Animals are great levelers. I think we should spend. Animals are just they're better than any pill and better than any of that. I don't know. They're fed, they're watered. They look at you with complete. What are you doing? Messing around, running around in circles. I've been fed. I'm watered. The only time I'll moan again is when I need to be fed or watered. Otherwise, I will sit here on the floor with my legs in the air, occasionally past wind, and that's it.
And I tell you, that can be really bad. Mine also argues it's really bad. Mine also.
I remember it well.
Sorry, I missed that.
No, I know. I remember. It's deeply pungent, concentrated. It's like refuse mixed with the worst form of flatulence. Because tin dog food really is something else, isn't it? Deep, luscious, jelly, briny bits of skewed mixture of processed bones, limbs, and sinews. Oh.
We actually do some like mince now. We actually have been doing mince because she's been unwell. And I tell you what, I thought like canned dog food was bad. Oh, no, I can't even go there. I just can't go. I almost melted, literally. I had to.
Maybe you should bottle this. Maybe you should bottle this wind somehow, and maybe it could be used to when people are constantly annoying you at a party. Maybe you could sell it in little sort of jars, and then somebody goes, "Look, please." Oh! And then somebody screams, falls backwards. They never bother you again. There could be a marketing idea here.
I'll think of something, I'm sure. My head's always going.
Growing up with dogs, though, I understand. I do know that smell. It's a smell you'll never forget, actually.
No, you
it
don't.
Really is.
It's funny about that.
It's a thin line between pleasure and pain, isn't it? It's a thin line between pleasure and pain. All the pleasure she gives you, she just reminds you that, oh my goodness me, I really must love you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Can I just ask you, because I don't want to forget about this. I want to mention to everybody that the Hidden Gems, which is chapter 2.
Yes.
Now, when does that come out?
It's actually, you can buy pre-release copies already at the website.
Okay.
And we did an album launch where the physical copies are here. But it's actually officially out on July the 4th.
Okay.
It's released on July the 4th. So it will be up on CD Baby, Amazon, iTunes, all those sorts of things as downloads, or the physical product, which you can get from captainofthelostways.com, the website.
Okay. Now, your website, do you also sell other things like merchandise as well?
We do. There's a horde of different things and bespoke design badges and Yes, there's an array of things and T-shirts. You can go to the Emporium on the website.
I've seen that. It's very cool.
Oh, lovely. It's a shame I haven't got a dog T-shirt for Lily, isn't it?
Oh, well, yeah. You know what? I really think that in a good... Well, I don't know if this is the right word or not. I think you could make a cult. You could become a cult. Like, really. I really think that you could get something going here. And
well,
you know... Sorry?
Carry on. It's okay.
Okay. No, you know, we were talking about followers and the amount of followers. Really, all you need are real people that actually like you, because there's nothing better than having real fans.
Well, it's funny. The whole idea of a cult. I was laughing with someone because the amount of things that I get made for me by fans is really quite incredible. From little dolls, Captain dolls, to portraits. To I've had a lady dedicate. She created a website called Captain of the Little Waves, which you can find on Facebook.
Okay.
Which is based around a Playmobil figure of myself, which I can certainly send you pictures of. It's beautiful and the detail is incredible. And over time, I've had people who've covered my songs. I've had artists ask if they can create artistic expressions. So a lady currently is making a mannequin.
Oh my God!
So I've had all these people who will, and they will send me these things. And I go, people who created a lady created a plaque saying the captain's word is law, and I was like, wow. I look at all these things, and I did say at the end of the year, we're hopefully going to do a show in a cathedral, and I said I'd like to do a Captain art gallery and exhibition because the amount of things I get, I've got young kids who've drawn lots of things and created models, and so I've got this whole Captain array of it's almost like Captain merchandise on a kind of
on steroids.
yes, almost, and it really is. Honestly, I really mean it's humbling because people do the most crazy, wonderful things that they do, and they just want to be part of that journey that's connected us all. And that's why the crowdfunding was so successful, because I said without a label or we were going to do this, and we raised nearly £12,000, which and I must be honest, in the day and age of where money is tight for a lot of people, people don't need to own physical things anymore. I did say the physical work of this album, which is a whole digipack, and we've created the whole thing on a game board called the Circus of Morality. Every illustration, everything we created with the spot varnishes was going to be a bespoke job. It was quite an expensive job, but I said, if we get the money and I can pay the studio time and we can do this, and the amount of people that backed me, honestly, and people that did fundraising. I did actually say in an interview that I think it was probably the 6 weeks of my life where I'd never had such support and kindness and fanaticism from so many people through what I do. And I'm not saying I didn't think it was going to work, but I did feel slightly reserved about, are we really going to get money up front, and are we, and for an artist like myself, it's vital. It's where this is my whole working life. I'm a professional musician and artist, and I thought maybe getting £3,000 or £4,000 would have been amazing. I just couldn't believe the lengths people went to, and it actually. I'm not saying it should ever restore your faith, because I have that endemic polarity of knowing that I think human nature and people are capable of doing astonishing things for the right reasons at the deepest level. Yeah. I also know that people never surprise me either, good or bad. So I hold no barometer of that. I just know that people can be fickle, but they can also be quite miraculous. So I keep a balanced view of humanity and thinking, oh, it didn't work out as well as I'd hoped because of all sorts of issues, or, oh my God, they've blown me away. And they did the latter. I was just astonished by the kindness, and the shows that people will come to watch me in Britain, they will come hundreds of miles. And at the Delius Chapel, where we did the launch, there were people that made journeys of 400 miles. One gentleman drove from France, and he drove 1,400 miles from Lyon. just to be at the show because he said there was no way he was going to miss it. And he'd watched the 4 previous shows that were much more local to him. But it takes my breath away, actually.
Wow.
If I had this fanaticism on a major level, yes, I'm sure I'd never need work again. So maybe it should always retain its bespoke attitude to keep my edge and constantly challenge me. But no, I have. I mean that with no sense of anything but deeply authentic uttering in saying that how many people have helped me has been quite mind-blowing. It really has. It really has. And thank goodness, Tracy, I was with Indiegogo because they did deliver the money, because so many people that were with Pledge Music, of course, Pledge Music has so much money from so many artists. So and some of the major artists on Pledge, like Swerve Driver and bands like this, they'd made over 150,000. Mine was a small amount comparatively, but to lose £12,000 for an artist like myself would have been absolutely. I don't know how I would have funded anything the next year of making the record and paying all the musicians, artists, the illustrators, video makers. I always pay all the people that work with me, even if it's only a small token amount. But this amount's allowed me to pay everyone as I would like to, rather than have to scrimp around, which is good.
Yeah, and what's even more astonishing, just when everybody thought that, you've blown them away, what is incredible is the fact that you recorded this on analog 2-inch tape.
That's right. Well, yeah, we touched upon this just earlier.
I've just heard so many people fall off their chairs. Wait a minute. No.
Yes, because if there are any musicians or engineers in the room, they'll go, why? They will, because they'll go, hang on, digital, simple, easy, cut and paste, edit. You could do 1 million cut and paste edits in the space of 5 minutes. Tape? Really? You're going to have to play the whole thing live from start to finish. Anyone that's going to play along with you has to generally play it 90% right, because we can't cut and paste like we can in the digital world.
No.
So it was interesting. It was interesting with some of the musicians playing along with it by saying, this is all on tape. All on tape. So that means, you could go back to the beginning, but, so you get halfway through, sorry, let's take that again. Let's do that again. But the romantic in me wanted to go back to creating something on tape, because I had the opportunity on an old 1970s machine that was used as I think the engineer at the time got it all the way down from Croatia. He drove all the way to go collect this old machine. And the story of it is that the machine that was used was a band that was big in the UK called Ultrasound. They were quite a big independent band. They had 2 or 3 hits in the UK, actually. They recorded their Ultrasound album, but on the premise that it'd be recorded on this machine. So the engineer involved with that, Alex Eden, drove all the way to Croatia to go and get this machine, to bring it back to record Ultrasound. And then I was tinkering along, talking to Alex, imagine recording your album on this. And yes, let's just say it made for challenges, because when you've only got the one machine, not like the old days of analog machines where every big recording house may have had 6, 7, 8, and they were calibrated regular, they were serviced regular. When you've got one machine and things aren't quite working right, and flutter and tape flutter and speed of things can change, you've got all these challenges. But I love, there's still something very subtle. Some people can't always tell the difference between digital and analog. I've always felt that I could at a subtle level by the way that tape is pushed and the saturation of the sound. It may not always be clear to the average layman, but for me, there is still, I know it's an overused word, warmth and valves. Things are pushed in a different way. I just wanted to do that, make that process happen, and we did it. And yes, it was a labour of love, but at the end of it, you go, And I remember some people say, "You'll never do that again, will you? Please don't put us through that."
But how did that change the whole mood? Like the whole mood of recording in a studio, and did it all bring it down a notch for everybody? Did you all get to actually chill? or was it a bit stressful?
Well, again, it was a very difficult one because what had happened, I never do things easy, Tracy. I don't know if it's just life saying, this is what you think is going to work. And actually, this is what's going to happen. So every time I partake in things, I've kind of accepted this might be my path in life, for life to constantly sculpt me away on all the extraneous, superficial flab. It will punish me until I go, okay, I give in. And in a way, I think the whole process started. The studio eventually went bust. Then I had to go and record other aspects and parts of it to where the tape machine was, with Alex in a small room. Then getting people into that space. So what should have taken a few months became a year because of things that weren't obviously within my control, but I was determined to see it out. And I actually made the point, though, because I said earlier, from our greatest failures come our greatest success. And I think in some ways, I'm not saying it with the death knell of the artist, but for an artist like myself, I thrive on pressure somehow. And the pressure that draws me under any show, whatever, even if I've barely rehearsed a new song, I love the freshness and the danger of that. And I'll say to the accordion player, oh, let's jam, let's do something new, let's just try. And I love that. So the danger to me, the death knell to me is being over rehearsed. And I can't do it even in, that's why the Captain show is always different every time, because to do the same show, even if it worked like clockwork, would not inspire me.
Yeah, well, you'd get bored easily. It's like, I love flying by the seat of my pants quite a lot.
Yes, yes. And I was offered an opportunity to go work on quite a large show, and they'd offered me potential of the lead part, and I said, oh wow, the money would be great, the opportunity would be, but then I looked at it and I thought, do you know what? If nothing else, I just don't think I could do it. I couldn't do the same thing night after night. And what I always do in this model is, especially when I'm solo, is I can just take it wherever I wish. And if the audience wants, I might ask the audience for 3 or 4 lines. We create a new song there on the spot, or we give a style. So it's improv, it's improvisation. Yeah. And for me, that keeps it fresh for me. It allows me. And so I think the story about the recording was, I did make the analogy that at times of sheer frustration and sheer difficulty, and Hidden Gems Chapter 1 was very similar for other reasons. I said, am I not just meant to record in a simple, easy environment? We do it over 3 months or whatever, or a month or 2 weeks or whatever it might be. No. This is how it's going to work for you. But in a strange way, it so heightens the senses, and it so heightens what you have to do. And I compare it to the idea of when you have a child, when you have a baby, that people often have this idea of waiting for the muse. And I found that I sort of feel prolific creatively. I'm prolific to the point of it feels like an illness. It isn't like something I can choose. It's constantly there for me. Sometimes it can feel, the effervescence can spill over to the point of it's been meditation and space and stopping my chattering mind, which is endlessly weighing up, marinating in observations or thoughts or patterns. And I realize that, again, for all of us, we are all in essence, you could talk about bipolarity, which is the often used word now, but all of us are in essences of scales on that bipolarity between being in our heads or being elsewhere, not kind of taking the head too seriously. Like the brain can be the world's lousiest lodger. He's putting you through hell, and when you're trying to sleep, and he's asking you things that you can't quantify or cure. And I think for me, coming out of that and fine-tuning those things is to say that I get to that degree of, I wonder what I would do if somebody gave me 3 months in a professional studio with a professional crew around me and said, come in and do your songs every day from whatever time. I don't know if it would, I'm not saying, because I can usually perform and find myself in that space. And the point I made about the baby was, it isn't waiting for the muse. It's waiting for when the baby's asleep and you get 2 hours. You're so fine-tuned that you will find that moment there and then. And I find if the performance thing just clicks in, it's like a standby button. We go into it. I'm not saying it always works perfectly, but there's an energy and there's a sharpness. And I think what happens to a lot of very successful artists is that they become successful and cannot ever recreate that hunger or that sharp-edged, almost divisive energy within the artistic temperament to create something magical. And you will hear lots of artists say, I could never recreate like that again, because suddenly you become comfortable, you're looked after, the songs have lost their edge, you may not have the same thing you had to say, you may have said it in a certain way. And I think that, in a way, to be a relatively successful but very challenged by circumstance as an artist might remain the best place to be an artist. I'm not saying that is like some kind of singular idea that should be some kind of mantra, but I am saying that I have asked myself that question, that if I had real comfort around me and I could just sit and laze on sofas and say, come on, are you ready for the take now, Captain? And I think I am, yeah. Oh, we'll have another coffee. Oh, look at this meal. We're just taking that for a meal and you're looked after. I wonder. I think something, I'm not saying that artistry has to come from the kind of, the beggar's banquet, but I do think something in great art comes from great hunger, great suppression and great, maybe like all things, from great suffering comes something, because you're having to really eke it out. It's like climbing a mountain and you've got to really eke it out. And if you've got no safety wire, you've got to be so concentrated, and every moment you're there. You can't sit there and go, well, it's all right, I'm on a safety wire and we can do this tomorrow or Thursday. You've got one day to do it. And that kind of fine-tunes, I think, what's going on. So it would be very interesting. It would be very interesting if I was ever in that position to work in a big plush studio. But I do like the idea of location recording, which I've done many times. And to be in a studio can sometimes be a little bit sterile. It can be like you've been in a doctor's waiting room or a hospital too long. It can feel a little bit like that. So I think the artistic fervour and the magic, the sparkle, that can actually be taken away. And many hours spent around electromagnetic frequencies can actually dull the energy. The core of your energy can be gone, and it can be quite a difficult process. It can be a great process, but it can be challenging. I think my ideal would be to work looking out of some large bay window over the ocean and record. That would be great, but I don't know how I'll ever afford that. Maybe one day, but who knows? But I like to think that I'm rich in different ways, that's the idea.
You can probably do that in Sydney.
Oh, Sydney. I do have family in Adelaide, and I mean, being there and I've never been to Sydney. It's yes, you have the ocean, you have the beaches, and you have the climate. My dear sister and family that live over there in Adelaide would often say, I get a little bit low when the winter comes. But I said, but the summer's coming back. We don't. We actually don't know here. So we're highly anxious that we get 2 days of the sun and everyone goes out, ends up sunburned and actually puts the barbecue on, because we don't know that it's going to last for a few weeks. Give us a few weeks.
Wow.
Just give us a few weeks. But I'm gathering you enjoy life in Sydney, Tracy.
Yes and no. I'm originally from Adelaide as well. So
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
A long time ago. But look, I do like Sydney, but as we talked about earlier, I just I don't know if it's age or not, but it's just getting all too much, too fast, too busy, But having said that, even I've got a 19-year-old daughter. Well, she's not 19 yet. She'll almost be 19. She hates the hustle and bustle. Actually, neither does my 15-year-old. A 15-year-old would love to sell up the house and go and live in the Southern Highlands, which is just,
Well, do you know what's interesting? This is what I'm saying. There's this dichotomy that I see some youngsters now. They're hitting a point where they're going, they're kind of seeing through it. And I think some will stay in it for so long and then wake up to that. But I think it's that idea of once you see through it, through this idea of this, we're not meant to be this busy and this overloaded. We should be a little bit busy. But like we said earlier, it's like the industry tells you can't have a little bit. No. You have all of it or none of it?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's like we go up to our very local supermarket up here. We don't go to the big shopping centre because I just can't. I just hate it, you know. So, but the problem now is there used to be houses along this road on the way to this, you know, our little local supermarket, and now they're just all high rises. You know,
yes.
and you think,
I met a gentleman from Melbourne after I'd visited my sister, and he actually said to me that the one thing we've learnt from Britain is not to build high rises because we realised a sense of isolation, because they were talking about the slums in India. That what was it about the slums in India that, despite the depravity and the ridiculously impoverished conditions, people were so happy and so connected. And once they started to sort of smash down, take away the slums, they were putting people in high rises, and people were. It was seen that this evidence of our Western culture, that depression is highest in Australia, the UK, and the USA, I believe. It's this idea that we become isolated, disconnected from this source, and people think of this as some kind of mystical, magical language. We are not separate from nature. We look at dogs, we look at animals, we look at dolphins, whales, whatever, and we go, oh, somehow we feel completely like, wouldn't it be wonderful to be a dolphin? Actually, we are not that far separated. We've only been indoctrinated and conditioned by this idea that we somehow should be doing all of these things. And I think children are. I think youngsters are waking up and saying,
we don't need to. We just don't need to, and I guess it's trying to keep up with the pace of everything else. But you know, I agree. I think a lot of young people are onto it. Maybe because they've heard us talk about it so much, and they've only had the experience of the fast-paced world of cyberspace. You know.
Yes.
You know, my 15-year-old said, when are we actually going to go on a holiday?
Yes. Well, you know, that point there is the classic point for feeling all these points are so, it's like a giant, we start off a conversation and people can feel like roaming satellites, and eventually you become this constellation that there are reference points that join us all and unify this interconnectedness that we're all feeling, because it's a universal feeling. It's a universal feeling of dread or disdain, or we are running far from our natures. And you don't have to believe in anything deeply, I don't know, there doesn't have to be any sense of dogma about this. It's like you say, it's like the animal knows how to live. How come the animal knows how to live? The animal is far more... has far more of an ability in knowing how to live than we do. What is it about the dog? It's a dog's life, as people say, because the dog knows. It's like that old thing I used to say that, you know, stomach empty, one problem, stomach full, many problems.
Yeah.
When we're hungry, we're just instinctive. And I think this thing that you've just said, as a fiercely independent artist that has to drive everything here at Captain Headquarters, wherever that may be, I don't get the chance to lean on somebody else to say, we'll take care of that. And therefore, taking time out becomes ridiculously difficult because you're such a small independent concern. You're managing everything. You're driving everything. You're the T-boy. That therefore, if you are a known artist or a bigger artist, you can take 5 years off, if so be it, if you're a well-named artist. And of course, they've had to put the time in when they were obviously slaves to the label by working everywhere and anywhere, establishing, doing it, having #1 records. But without that, we seem to forget this idea of balance. So for a small independent concern, there appears to be this thing, this dichotomy again, that when you're very busy, you have no time. When you have no time, and of course, that allays as well, aligns in with this idea of money. So when you're wealthy, you might be very busy, but have no time. When you have time, you're generally maybe not as fluid. The money is flowing in. And I have this constant levitation between, okay, as an independent artist, I better keep doing a little bit of this. I better keep in people's conscience. But I do remind all my fans, or any people that follow me, they understand that this model is about reclaiming one's own space and life. And I've had to kind of conclude that if the big boys don't play game with the small independent artist and give them that public space and allow that to sort of just tip over into something bigger that you could hopefully manage, then it's almost like the old adage of chasing one's tail. And then I see a lot of independent artists burn out. And I think we're all in danger of that, because we're trying to do so many things for hopefully the right reasons, but there's only so much you can manage and do. And I think you have to kind of eventually accept that actually I can't keep on this all the time. I can't be the label, the manager, the agent, the T-boy. And I've got to allow myself 2 or 3 weeks out and say, it doesn't matter. I'm off grid. Oh, but dear Captain, I'm off grid. And my life is actually more than the very nature of things I sing about and point to. I would be a complete hypocrite if I never got off this giant levitating. This giant hamster wheel. I'm actually pointing to things by saying, reclaim your own life. And you don't have to always be this idea that people constantly tell me, and advice I've had: tweet more. You need to do this more. You need to put pictures up more. You need to tell people when you're doing a sound check. Why do people need to know about? Oh, you've got to show them what pedals you use. It's so dry. It's so tedious, but everyone's doing it. Doesn't mean that it's not insane. When you're arriving on a bus, show people if the sun's out. I'm sure millions of people. I mean, it can be mildly interesting, but I think we've become dumbed down by this whole nature of just, I don't know. It's just like endless prose of just, I'm just arriving at the venue. Oh, well, I wonder if we're going to get a parking space. Oh, it looks like we've got a parking space. Hang on. Oh, hang on. Oh, the driver's looking a little bit. Hang on. Some winding down the window. Wait a minute. We've not got a parking space. Now, what are we going to do? Sorry, I'm just going to ring the manager. It's almost like, do we need constant commentary? But it's almost as if like the constant sort of nullifying of our senses has become the way to go. It's almost as if like, oh, we like that. You like that. It's interesting. I think that's where they've taken a lot of the magic out of it. Therefore, the Captain model. I've heard PR and promoters talk to me in the past. Oh, it's a little bit fantastical, isn't it? What's wrong with fantastical? Yeah, people they want to know about you. And that's fine. I'm giving as much about me as possible. But whatever happened to the magic? People don't want that. In music has become like a social commentary, which is brilliant. And there's a lot of social commentary within what I do as the Captain. But wherever did we decide to throw the magic away? And when I look at bands from the 80s who had so much magic going on, and you look at people like Bowie, Prince, and the magic, and I kind of go, oh, we're not allowed that anymore. No, you've got to sing songs about, it could be about the Twitter generation. People are being stabbed, and this is very big on the grime scene, and it's relevant. And the grime market takes that, and these guys sing from their hearts, and that's great. But does it mean that one thing should be exclusive? Therefore, we can't anymore we can't do magic. If you want to talk about Captain of Cross Waves, then go watch a movie. Movies still allow us that sense of magic, but for some reason they don't allow us it in music anymore, which I find fascinating.
I think that the whole publicity thing regarding the artists are asked to do more video content and put more of themselves up there. Probably, I would say, apply to more of those artists that more or less fit in your genre kind of thing, but when it comes to something like, yours, you could get away with not doing that, because yours is all about this whole mystique kind of thing. It's actually quite clever how you've done it, I think. So I think that it lends itself to not having that requirement. Whereas if you've got so many other artists that sound so similar, they've got to differentiate themselves from one another to get the attention.
Yeah, that's a very, very a good point, and I understand the point of, if you are being marketed that way, then you've got to do that, because it's always like, who's making the loudest noise. Yeah. So I do understand that. I actually do understand that.
jumping up and down trying to get attention for people to listen to their music. But, you know, the thing is, at least with yours, it speaks for itself. So, you know.
Kind of you to say so. This is almost like a captain counselling session, isn't it?
We could go on.
She says the loveliest things.
We've been going 2 hours. This is probably our longest podcast ever.
Oh, goodness me.
I'll have to send you a medal for this. I'll have to send you I don't know. I'm looking at a comic. Who does your comics? Is that one of yours?
Oh. No, well, again, somebody was inspired to create a comic strip. There has been talk about somebody would like to put a comic together all based around the whole Captain Journeys, because we're going to do that was the idea, that might be the next funding exercise, to actually fund the comic story of all the ideas and notions about where the captain's come from, where he's going, what he's about, what the monologues are, the interludes, the idea of the journey of life that he's making. So the whole thing is people have created little comic strips. And yeah, again, I kind of just got that message the other day about, wow, he's created this little comic strip idea. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's really quite flattering, actually.
That's really great. Yes. Wow.
It's fabulous, yes.
I'll put that up on the site as well with the podcast so people can have a look at it.
Fab.
Yes.
Right.
So, look, is there anything else that you'd like to mention? Because I was thinking maybe we probably should wrap it up.
Yes.
I could keep talking, but I'm not sure how many people will listen for maybe 3 hours.
I understand entirely, and I'm prone to digression. I'm prone to go the long way round. I'm prone to see the colours and the fascinating facets within any kind of anecdotal idea or conversation or observation. This is the thing. This is what I'm talking about, roaming satellites. My head's full of roaming satellites that then just see all these little interconnected ideas. Yes, and I'm probably, yes. It's been so lovely, genuinely lovely talking to you, Tracy, and sharing this. I also feel that, yes, my next stage as the captain is to create a concentrated version of myself. So I can get in, get out, shake it all about, and it's done. Instead of taking people on this huge kind of journey through the Gununga Gap, this kind of existential void. But I am an agent who specialises in boundary dissolution. I am a deep sea dream diver. So I realise that I'm taking your audience and us engaging in such a way. We are we are covering all angles, and yes, I tend to be very angular, with no set pattern. So I'm just a rigid, uncontrollable map, I believe, and I have no idea where I'm going, in the loveliest sense. I think like all great art, you've no idea when you start it how it's going to end, and I think that's the same as the idea based on life as well. So I don't think I should keep you any longer, apart from saying, this has been like, how could I put it? It's been like one giant cuddle, like having a cuddle. Desire to be cuddled. And of course, they say we should cuddle each other and hold each other for at least 30 seconds. It is therefore then that oxytocin is released. But this is like 2 hours of a virtual cuddle, isn't it? And it's been lovely. And now, of course, I have 2 reasons at least to come to Australia. One is to see my lovely sisters Sally and Olivia and Elise and Jason and Amelia and Isla and Ava and Richard and all those other lovely things about going there. And now, of course, to come over to Sydney.
That's right. There's no excuses now. You've got a few places to come. So,
yes. Is it going to be sunny? And will you have a sea view?
You know what? I've got a bush view, and we've got wallabies, kangaroos that come across the front lawn at about 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, goodness me.
Yeah.
So there you go. Not only do you have the animal levelling you inside, you have animals running across your lawn outside.
Oh, yeah, we do. We're actually very lucky where we live. You wouldn't think that we're actually in Sydney, but we're one of the lucky few, I think. So, Yes, yes.
How marvelous, and you are blessed and enjoy. And all I can say is, yes, this has been a wonderful
chat.
I would call it an event.
Yeah,
and a wonderful
adventure.
An adventure.
This
That's
has
it.
been
Got
an
it.
adventure. And if people are not intrigued yet to want to click over and just check out more, I don't know what's wrong with them. But look,
let's just hope your audience doesn't go, he says a lot. I wish he was a little bit more mysterious. Maybe I should have said less. So you'd say, so anyway, Captain, and I go, I'm not really sure. And then you go, Captain, can you quantify? What's the difference between recording on... I will leave that open to debate, that there's no point me explaining to your listeners what things should be. They should find out for themselves, which fundamentally they are, but I'm using an awful amount of words to try and convince otherwise. We are limited by language, however, and I've, of course, tried everything to disprove that theory over the last 2 hours.
You do.
Contradiction and paradox, so there you go.
Yeah, you just do that so well. For everybody as well, listening to this on Spreaker, on iTunes, iHeartRadio, please also check out on Music Talk's website on our Guest Talk page as well. We'll have all the links up there. We'll even I'll put one of my favourite videos from Captain of the Lost Waves. You have to wait until you see that one. We'll have everything on the Guest Talks page as well, so you can check out more, and you can check out where you can actually get a pre-order, or can actually is pre-sales.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Pre-release.
Yeah. Hidden Gems Chapter 2, Circus of Morality album, and wow, we're just going to have it all up there. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation, and I've just got to make sure I tell everybody before this even begins that we should allow them time to go and grab a drink and sit down and chill. Yeah.
maybe you could do a little klaxon, a gentle klaxon, to just say, okay, it's still not ended. Go and have a toilet break.
Yeah.
Or a siren, or the sound of a ship, or me just doing my tremolo. Maybe you could do the tremolo. Okay. This is a siren. Go and have a toilet break. So I leave you with this: the sound of the songbird sniff box. Here we go.
Guest Talks with Tracy Arbon, bringing you special guest interviews from musictalks.xyz.